All right, hello everyone. So today we have our tale of two drafts, and I want to just focus in on this icicle I had here at the 3 mana slot. So this was the first draft I did. This was my draft weekend draft, and I drafted a lot of 3 drops. So I just want to focus in on that. That's kind of the crux of today's video, is that I basically had too many 3 drops. So let's go on through the mana curve and talk about what I drafted. So at the 1 drop slot, I had Sedge Scorpion, Sanitarium Skeleton, and Bone Splinters. The 1 drop Death Touch Scorpion is a nice way to just kind of gum up the ground, and I had a couple of things that I was trying to sacrifice, so like the Bone Splinters, I could sacrifice the Sanitarium Skeleton. Also, I picked this up kind of early and was trying to build towards that. Set that down there. So this Blood-Soaked Altar is a 6 mana, 4 and 2 black artifact to tap, pay 2 life, discard a card, sacrifice a creature, create a 5/5 black demon creature token with flying. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. So this is a very kind of narrow and costly artifact, but it basically allowed me to like cash in my Sedge Scorpion or my Sanitarium Skeleton for a huge demon and an extra land kind of late in the game that I didn't need. So that was my 1 drop slot and why I had those. And then my 2 drop slot was really my weakest. I had 1 Woodland Champion, 1 Rabid Bite. So if we look at this, right, Woodland Champion gets +1/+1 counters whenever a token enters, and then Rabid Bite is a premium green removal spell. But that's it. That's all I had at 2. I had a couple more sideboard cards at 2, but nothing really worth playing in the main deck. And this was my major issue was the draft, was not having enough playable 2 drops. So let's talk about the 3 drops. First of all, Murder was my pack 1 pick 1, because my rare was the Flood of Tears. It's the 6 mana blue sorcery that bounces everything to their owner's hands, and then if you bounce 3 or more permanents, you get to put a permanent onto the battlefield. I just could not see that working out well, and there weren't really any good uncommons either, so I picked Murder as my first pick, and was definitely happy to have it, because then later on, I got a second Murder. So having these 2 great removal spells was really key in doing well in the draft. I got the Ferocious Pup to try to trigger the Woodland Champion. I had 2 Gifts of Paradise because I opened a expensive bomb that I'll show you in a bit. I had 2 Thrashing Brontodons, right? This is a great green uncommon. And Netcaster Spider to help out with the creatures with reach. That. Of course, Frostlinks. I was splashing some blue in here, so I was green-black and picked this up to splash. Loaming Shaman's just kind of a nice little 3-drop that can put cards from your graveyard back into your library, so you have the potential to draw them again. And then Scuttlemutt was there to help with the fixing. So I ended up playing the Frostlinks and the Wave Crasher here. Now we're up to our 4 mana slot. Again, though, at 4 mana, I only had 2 cards. So that's one of the reasons I splashed for the Wave Crasher too, is because I just needed something at 4 mana. And a 4/4 for 4 that can have some incidental value, like bouncing a creature that has pacifism or something on it, was worth playing to me. So I went ahead and splashed for that. Then, of course, the classic Anvil Rot Raptor, which is just great at kind of gumming up the air and winning in the air, as long as you don't have like a Boreal Elemental or something. So to facilitate this splash, I did have, I had the Scuttlemutt, and I had the 2 Gifts of Paradise, and I picked up a Thornwood Falls. So that I had no problem casting my blue creatures. In fact, I cast both the Wave Crasher and the Lynx, my 2 splash cards, in the same turn, which was kind of part of the heartbreaker that I'll tell you about in a minute, but that's coming up in a little. These were the 5 drops that I got. Wolfkin Bond was to help some of my creatures get bigger and get a token in there because I had the Woodland Champion, which gets counters for the tokens. So I was trying to support that as much as I could. Remember, the Blood-Soaked Altar, which was my only 6-drop, also makes a token. So that's one of the reasons why I felt comfortable picking and playing the Woodland Champion. I also had Mammoth Spider because that's just a great card that can gum up the ground and the skies. And then I picked Shared Summons. This card was really an all-star in this deck. I had a lot of good creatures to find, and that brings us to our big bomb that I picked. So you saw at the 6-drop slot a couple of times that I had the Blood-Soaked Altar, so I won't go over that again. But here it is, Villis, Broker of Blood. And man, I felt like I had all of the parts to really make this happen. I put a few more swamps than forests in my deck. I had pulled in pack 2. I pulled Temple of Malady, so I had the color fixing in my colors. The murder that I picked early kind of put me into black. And then I picked up an early Moldervine Reclamation, which I didn't end up playing just because I needed some more creatures in the deck. But I was kind of solidly black-green when I pulled Temple of Malady. And then was past Villis in that pack. This was pack 2. So it was like, man, yeah, green-black, here we go. So best play, probably of the whole draft, was my opponent played, I think it's Eternal Isolation, the white card, and put Villis on the bottom of my library. And the next turn, I played Shared Summons and brought it from the bottom of my library right back into my hand and replayed it. So like super sweet combination there. That was one of the highlights. So the only other thing I haven't showed you was I took a Cryptic Caves, which was nice. It's a little greedy because I was doing 3 colors, well, 2 main colors and a splash, but I had the fixing in Thornwood Falls for blue. Let me show you that. And I had the Scuttlemutt, which taps for any color, and I had the 2 Gifts of Paradise. So I felt like I could really get away with running a colorless land. So being able to turn this card into some gas was just really awesome. And I definitely got some use out of this card. So how did the draft go overall? Well, unfortunately, I went 1 and 2. So I won my first game and just, was able to play some good creatures and get out Villis and take over. But my second game, my opponent hadn't seen Villis yet, right? It was like we played game 1 and he won game 1. And then game 2, I managed to get Villis out. He had already played 2 aerial assaults and played his Meteor Golem. And then I play Villis, and it's like, here we go. So I was able to take out his flyers using Villis' ability, draw some more cards, and then he had a 1/1 Fairy Miscreant, so I said, okay, I'm going to attack. And he blocked with the Fairy Miscreant. I didn't have any black mana left over for the turn to just kill it, so I was like, well, might as well clear the blocker and then start swinging in for some lethal damage the next turn. Well, guess what he top-decked? He top-decked another aerial assault. The 3rd aerial assault that he had, he top-decked it and killed Villis and was able to stabilize and go in for the win. So that was such a heartbreaker there. And then in game 3, that was the sweet game. Well, not game 3, round 3. That was the sweet game where I got to pull Villis back from the bottom of my library with Shared Summons. So I was 1 game up on my opponent, and then in game 2, my opponent played Drakuseth and just killed me. And then in game 3, my opponent played Drakuseth, did some things. I'm going to talk about this on my Failblog, so you can check that out there. It's about not being a pushover when you're playing in Paper Magic. The second heartbreaker of the day, right? So the first heartbreaker was top decking the removal spell to get rid of Villas. The second heartbreaker of the day was that I had played Frostlinks. I had played Frostlinks on a board where my opponent didn't really have anything, but he did have Drakuseth. So I tapped down Drakuseth and swung in with my other creatures and chipped away some damage. And then I played the rest of my turn really carefully, so I would have 2 blue sources for the next turn. So the next turn comes, he doesn't play anything, he just drew a land, and I'm feeling like I've got this game. This is game 3 of round 3. I'm at least going to get a second win, have a winning record. So I played Wavecrasher, returning the Frostlinks to my hand, and then I replayed the Frostlinks to keep Drakuseth tapped down and attacked, and then got to my next turn. Drakuseth still tapped down. My opponent didn't play anything. I attacked again, and my opponent was at 1. He was at 1 life. So if you're following along here, I didn't attack with the Frostlinks before I bounced him to my hand with the Wavecrasher. So that meant that if I had just attacked, right? So Wavecrasher's in my hand. I played the Frostlinks the turn before. I move to my next turn. I attack with it. There aren't any blockers besides there's the one tapped out Drakuseth. And then I played the Wavecrasher and replayed Frostlinks on my second main phase. I would have won. It was literally that one missed attack from the Frostlinks where I bounced it in my first main phase because I was so excited that I had enough blue mana to do it, and I was able to keep his big dragon tap down that I just couldn't help myself and played it in my first main phase when I should have attacked first. So take a lesson from that. That's not going to be a fail blog because I have the other one about not being a pushover scheduled. So hopefully that is the lesson in attack first and then do your stuff on the second main phase. So now let's look at the 2-drop slot for the draft I just did this last Monday. This is a lot better. So first of all, Blood Burglar is a great 2-drop. I mean, it's a bear, right? A 2/2 for 2 with upside because of the lifelink. Renowned Weaponsmith, again, just an early creature that I could play, and it tutors. There we go. It tutors for a Vial of Dragonfire. I wasn't really high on this card before this draft, but there are so many low toughness flyers that this card almost always had a good target. So really happy to be able to tutor that up in situations. I was past Steel Overseer in pack 1, probably pick like 3 or something like that. And I don't know why somebody passed this. I mean, I understand that ideally you have like a bunch of artifact creatures and it's kind of more of a constructed card, but just by itself, it's pretty good. I mean, you play it on turn 2. On turn 3, you get to start adding counters, and you just kind of play out the rest of your cards up your curve while you continue to tick it up and put a counter on it. Usually I put the counter on it at the end of my opponent's turn, so it's available to block. You can also block with it and then tap it to put a counter on it to make it bigger. So it's really a great card just by itself, and I was really happy to pick it up. And then I was only 2 colors in this deck, but I picked up Prismite as another playable 2-drop. Not great, but if I had Prismite and Steel Overseer out, then I could start growing the Prismite. So it kind of turned into a 2-drop with potential upside. So this is what I played at the 3-drop slot. Just gonna go through these real quick. Winged Words is the one that costs 1 less if you control a flyer and you get to draw 2 cards. Verity Vampire is the 3/2 vanilla creature, just kind of a curve filler. Frostlinks, you saw in the previous draft, which was the 2/2 and it freezes an opponent's creature. Murder, I was lucky and picked that up pretty early in pack 1. These two Tomebound Lich cards were great pickups in, I think it was pack 2 or 3, I forget. But I was past one and I snap picked it because I was in black and blue at that point. And then the next pack had a second one, and it was just glorious. And then Soul Salvage is a great card for limited because things are going to die, people are going to play removal spells, and to get some value back, like to get back the Frostlinks or the Tomebound Lich from the graveyard and replay them for their Enter the Battlefield effects was really powerful. So I did an Icicle on 3 in this draft, and that was a big part of why I did well. This was my 4-drop slot, so again, Anvil Rot Raptor was a great way to kind of gum up the air. I've been really happy with that when I don't have very many other flyers. Agonizing Siphon was a good removal spell that does 3 damage to any target and you gain 3 life. Now, that any target is important because I actually missed lethal a turn early because I used that to remove one of my opponent's creatures instead of dealing 3 damage to him, which would have been lethal after I attacked, or before I attacked. Wait, that didn't make sense. If I had used that in my first main phase and attacked, I would have won, or if I attacked and then used it in my second main phase, I would have won. And then Sleep Paralysis, nice removal spell. 2 Octo Prophets were great. That's the 3/3 that you get to scry 2 when it enters the battlefield. Drawn from Dreams, I wasn't too high on this card, but then in my last draft, a guy played it against me and basically dug through all of his lands to find the action that he needed to win, and that's pretty much how it played out for me every time as well. There's a time where I looked at the top 7, and it was like 4 lands, a 2-drop that I didn't want, and then 2 cards that were just gas. And so I was really happy with Drawn from Dreams. And then Dungeon Geists. Let's take a look at that card. So this card is a bomb. I mean, the 3/3 in the air is pretty good. I mean, it's not the biggest flyer, but oftentimes it was the biggest flyer that was on the board. When it enters the battlefield, you get to tap target creature an opponent controls. That creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step for as long as you control Dungeon Geists. So your opponent plays out a big 8/8 or whatever, big flyer. You just get to keep it tapped down. It basically doesn't exist. Now, that isn't great if they have an ability like the Angel that you gain an extra life, or the Hydra that gets to fight creatures if the creature gets targeted by something. It's good to try to tap down creatures that don't have abilities and then use kill spells on other creatures. Like you saw, I had the Murder in my 3-drop slot. So that's just a bit of strategy there. Tap the things that don't have static, lasting abilities, and then try to use hard removal for the things that do. So Dungeon Geist is what really brought me into blue. I'll talk a little bit about the other cards I drafted, but it was kind of a weird draft. I was mostly black, and then had a few different options of directions to go for color. But then when I opened up Dungeon Geist in pack 2, it was like, yeah, I'm going blue. Let's do this. I only had 1 5-mana card. I had the choice between this Epicure of Blood and Boneclad Necromancer. And originally I had the Necromancer in, but after I played my first game, I realized I had a lot of lifelink. I had the Agonizing Siphon gains me life, the 2-drop Vampire I had gave me life, the Tomebound Liches gave me life. So I thought this card would be a better card overall to play. And it was a 4/4, which, is a decent body on the ground. Did I ever end up playing this card? No. In fact, whenever I got to draw and discard with Tomebound Lich, I oftentimes just discarded this for something better, like a removal spell or one of my win conditions. Speaking of win conditions, I love this card. I always love the sea creature cards anyways, but this was a card that I picked up kind of late, and it can just win the game because when you get into that late game and there's these big blockers or big flyers or whatever, and there's kind of a board stall, you can just pay 7 mana and run in for 4 damage every turn, and that'll get the game done. Then I also picked up a Meteor Golem kind of early. I don't know why it was passed to me. I mean, I guess there are some maybe better cards than this, but Meteor Golem is a great card. I mean, I know 7 mana is a lot, but being able to just destroy anything of your opponents and have a 3/3 body left over is really good. Also, in the last game of the night, I lived the dream and had Steel Overseer and Meteor Golem on the battlefield at the same time, and just very patiently ticked up the Steel Overseer, which then of course added counters to the Meteor Golem until they were both 10/10s and was able to just swing in for the win. So that was the wombo combo that I was hoping to pull off with Steel Overseer and at least one artifact creature, and I was able to do that. So I was very happy with that. So that was my deck. Overall, I would say I just had a better curve, right? I had kind of the same amount or close to the same amount at 2, 3, and 4. And that's all I needed to grind out some value and win. I had quality removal spells. I had card advantage through things like Winged Words and Drawn from Dreams. I had almost nothing at the high end, right? I had the Frilled Sea Serpent, the Meteor Golem, and the one Epicure of Blood. And I just didn't need them. This is the trap I kind of fall into sometimes, is I feel like I need some big, powerful creatures in order to close out the game. But if you have something like the Sea Serpent, which is a win condition, eventually, if the board is just completely stalled out, you will win with the Sea Serpent, as long as you have the 7 mana. You know, you have some of that, you have some value, you have ways to tap out your creature, or tap down your opponent's creatures, and ways to bring your creatures back, just like value. You know, I had a lot of value in the deck, and that's really what helped me to go 3-0. And not only did I go 3-0, but every round I played, I was a 2-0. So I never lost with this deck, which is absurd. I mean, it's never happened to me before. And it was just a really good luck of the draw in some cases, and good quality cards, a good curve, and exactly kind of what you want from your draft deck. So let's go in. As you see here, I have a Leyline of the Void. It is foil. I'm not sure if you can tell the camera, but that was my first pick, and it's not necessarily a good limited card. I did bring it in one game because my opponent had the Gorging Vulture, which puts cards in your graveyard. They also had ways to bring it back with like Soul Salvage and Gravedigger. So I brought it in, never played it, still managed to win. So that was all fine and dandy. But yeah, I just couldn't take anything else in the pack because of the value of a foil Leyline of the Void. Was just, I just had to take it. So I was really high on Mystic Forge during the pre-release. And I looked at my 4-drop slot while I was making cuts, and I realized, I said, okay, I have Winged Words at 3, which is some card advantage. I have Drawn from Dreams and Mystic Forge at 4. And those are both like card advantage, card selection, really, for Mystic Forge cards. So it's like, which one is better? And I had a really hard time because I had the Steel Overseer and the Prismite and the Violet Dragonfire and the Meteor Golem. So it's possible that I would be able to cast the top card in my library. And I really like having the ability to just clear the top card of your library. But at the end of the day, Drawn from Dreams just was better card selection. So on the 4-drop slot, when I had to make a cut between one of those two, I went ahead and chose Drawn from Dreams and was not disappointed. This was kind of an early pickup. I think this was still pack 1 when I picked this up. So I wasn't quite sure where I was. I hadn't picked Drawn from Dreams yet. So I really like this card as a way to kind of control the top of your library. But I didn't end up playing it in this draft. And then Noxious Grass. Picked this up in, I think it was like pack 3. And was just a great sideboard card. I mean, most of my picks were black in the beginning. So I kind of cut black pretty quick. And I learned that the person to my left was also playing black. So there wasn't much black going around the table, and I managed to get some great black coming my way and some great sideboard cards. In round 3, I played against a green-white opponent who had the big Hydra that can fight, Gargos, I think, and some other really good white and green creatures, and it was like perfect. Just slided this right in and had a 2 mana basically kill any creature spell because he was playing green and white. So that was an awesome pickup for the sideboard. So my second pick was Reduce to Ashes, right? So I first picked the Leyline, second pick I picked Reduce to Ashes, and it was really between this and Chandra's Outrage, but I realized that if I needed to just splash red, then this is much easier. I almost took Chandra's Outrage because it's a cheaper spell. It does 4 damage and 2 damage to the creature's controller, so it's a really nice, efficient card. But I realized with the double red casting cost in Chandra's Outrage, that would be harder to splash. So I went ahead and picked Reduce to Ashes in case red wasn't my main color, it was just a splash color, and was overall happy to make that pick, and then ended up not playing it anyway, so didn't matter. So yeah, Dungeon Geist really pulled me into blue. I had a better curve that time and was just able to outvalue my opponents and had some great cards. I mean, picking up late Tomebound Liches was awesome. Like, no one else was really in black, and so they didn't, I guess, want to splash for them, and picking up 2 was just amazing. So that was the draft. I hope you enjoyed. I'm going to zoom out so you can see what my curve looked like. Unfortunately, you won't really get to see the card names, but you'll kind of see how there's a little bit more even distribution in the 2, 3, and 4 slot. So there it is. 2 drops, 3 drops, 4 drops, 5, 6, and 7. Which, right, looks way different. Way more balanced on the curve, which is really what you want. If you're curious about the lands that I used, I had 17 lands in both the first draft and the second draft. In the first draft with Villas requiring 3 black, I had more swamps than forests. I think I had like 1 more swamp than the forest. And then in this draft, I had 1 more island than swamp because I had a lot of double blue creatures and only 1 double black at murder. And mana always worked out pretty fine. It didn't really have any problems. So I hope you enjoyed that. I have a bunch of packs to open, including the promo pack here. Was a lucky die roll winner during draft weekend to get this promo pack. That's how the store I went to decided to do it, was just assign it randomly to a draft pot of 8. And for this 3-0 draft, I have all of these to open. I'm going to do that in a separate video because this one kind of got a little long. So if you like pack openings, go ahead and check that out. And thank you so much for watching.